Hey, welcome everybody to the big picture with me and my man Chris. We're gonna, and as always, if you've been following us for the last month or so, you're like, man, these guys are really slinging it. When it comes to financial conversations in a time where everybody's talking about something related to money, whether it's tariffs, this is that, it's digital currencies, it's the unbanked, the bank. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the unbanked in the banking world. And Chris brought this subject to me, and I'm like, Chris, what are we talking about here? I'm trying to understand. We've often heard about the unbanked, people that just don't have, money in what you call a traditional bank, and then you talk about the unbanked bankers, and I'm like, it's kind of a twist on some words here. So I'm gonna get Chris to introduce himself and talk to us about what we're talking about today. Give us some context.
Well, Grant, hey, how you doing today? Great to see you. And you really set me up for exactly an interesting topic, which is, unbanking the banked, right? And we, like you said, we can throw those words around a few different ways. Everyone wants to talk about banking the unbanked.
Yeah.
I mean, I just want to put one statement out there really quick that I think will cover a lot of what we want to talk about, which is that there's more than 1 billion people that are unbanked. And those people don't need banks. They do need an easy, fast way to pay for things and to get paid. And today, that's pretty much the mobile phone, right? That's pretty much, what you can do and everything. So we'll talk a little bit more about it, but I look at those unbanked people and say, they don't really, what advantage, why do they need the banking system?
That's an interesting topic. Growing up, I'm thinking about my own self, right? I remember I couldn't wait to get a checking account. You want to get a checking account, then you got it, your bank book, right? And they taught you how to balance a checking account or a savings account. You had to be able to get your, and it was not bad, nothing bad about that, right? And then I remember my kid coming up to me and saying, how do you write a check? I'm like, didn't you learn that in school? Like, no, things have changed dramatically. Or thinking about, yeah, I got to send money down, let's say down to the islands. Hey, I need to send money down to the St. Croix or something like that. So you use Western Union. That was the only way of doing it, and it was expensive, to do that. Right? It's very expensive.
It is.
Now you can just not even less than a second use all these different whether it's a Cash App, it's a Venmo, it's a Zelle, I mean, I can go on and on. I mean, that's just one form of banking, but the banking world has changed since I was in school, right? So it's a different world. Help us understand that even deeper.
Well, Grant, I'll just go back to what you said too. I mean, for me, my early experiences at the bank was, going to the bank with my father, for instance, and walking out with a new toaster. So and probably my first experience was, I don't know, maybe my Christmas club. And I remember having, the bank book, right? You never went to the bank without your bank book. And also with checking account. But my big issue has always been that in the schools, they don't teach these things. And they don't teach anything really when it comes to your financial well-being or your financial life or how to live your financial life. These are just not topics that they teach in school. And listen, I understand, why it's helpful to learn biology, why it's helpful to learn trigonometry. And I think a lot of it has to do with, getting you to think and process information in a better way, right? But then you come out of high school and of course, what's the first thing everybody wants? They want to buy a car. There's nobody you can really ask about that. And, young kids today are less likely to ask their parents for help, because they know more. Okay. So in my own grandkids, I can tell you, when they go to a car dealership, there's really only one question they ask, which is, how much is the monthly payment? Oh, $400? I can afford that. They don't look to see, is it a 2-year, 5-year, or 7-year loan? They don't look to see, is the interest rate 10%, 20%, or 25%, right? They don't look to see, what the actual payment and what the actual value. So, you buy a car, say brand new even, and you pay $30,000, and by the time you're done paying your loan, you pay $50,000 for that car.
Yeah.
But nobody's taught them. So many people today, especially I would say in the US, are upside down on their loans, right? Where they owe more than their car is worth.
Right.
It's a very common scenario, and it happens to people who should know how these things work. But again, cars to me are interesting because it's it's a personal buy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I need certain things, but what car fits my image, right? So these are the kind of things that put people and marketing in the car world has been very effective. So it puts people into a position where they want to buy. They don't need. They want to buy a particular car, and it's not a question of the cost or how much it's going to spend or anything. It's more of a question of when I'm riding down the street, how many heads are turning.
Status. You said, and this, you brought up something, and I'm glad you brought this up because I find this, and I'm just going to say, I think it's irresponsible for our educational system to not teach our kids how to play this game of capitalism. This is the point. When you leave high school, you're on a monopoly board. And if you don't realize that your job, first of all, get the car. You need the car. You know why? To go around the board. So you get around the board so you can collect your $200, right? And if you don't collect your $200, eventually you're going to end up in jail because that's basically what's going to happen. But if you only understand, you don't just get the car to collect the $200. That's not going to help you win the game. You got to start to accumulate property. You got to start to accumulate houses. You got to get property. You got to get housing, and then you get a business, which is the hotel. We have to teach our kids economic responsibility. I mean, as a core value in any educational system, from K through 8th grade, in the high school, in the college, you need to know these things because this is how you survive in this world. If I know how economy works and I don't know how biology works, I think I'll survive. I think I'll do okay. If I understand that, hey, $1 today, you'll get me $5 tomorrow, I need to be thinking because I'm pretty sure I might live tomorrow. So I need to be thinking about these things and how this is going to transact. And so to your point, I have realized that it's up to us as parents and community leaders. We got to teach our kids how to play this game. There is no question about it. People are, oh, the tariffs and this and that. That's because they're playing an economic game. It's about capitalism now. Who's gonna what values are on the table? Who has the import export? If you don't understand the basic of these things, you can't really effectively run your own life and say how it's going to affect you long term. Now we bring this all full circle, what you talked about. We're gonna go to break because we every 10 minutes we take a small break, but we want the audience to start thinking about this when we say we're talking about the unbanked and the bank and what that really means, because this economic system, this monopoly board is changing and is changing rapidly. So we're going to talk about that when we come back. How about that, Chris?
I'm ready.
All right.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stock futures were moving lower this morning. President Donald Trump's latest round of tariffs is now in place. Trump's latest tariffs pushed those imposed on China this year to as high as 104%. And now China has raised tariffs on U.S. goods to 84%. Oil today sank to a fresh 4-year low on demand concerns. It was well below $60 a barrel this morning. Another major loss for Wall Street yesterday that started with promise. Stocks jumped higher at the opening bell, but after another volatile session, punctuated by tariff remarks from the White House, the Dow finished down 320 points, the S&P 500 fell 79, the Nasdaq slid 335 points. Former Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers warned that the U.S. is now likely headed toward a recession, with potentially 2 million Americans put out of work thanks to tariff increases. Summers spoke with Wall Street Week, predicting losses in household income of $5,000 per family or more. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg.
In today's fast-paced financial landscape, access to capital is the key to success. At the heart of this revolution is Case Capital Markets, powered by SETI Case. Here, innovation and investment converge, creating a dynamic environment where businesses can thrive and reach new heights. Introducing Grant McGaw, the senior advisor at Case Capital Markets. Grant is a visionary leader, dedicated to connecting businesses with institutional capital and strategic funding. His expertise opens doors to game-changing investment opportunities, making him an invaluable partner for companies looking to scale and succeed in the competitive world of finance. With an impressive 25 years in technology, 9 years in healthcare, and 6 years in investment banking, Grant McGaw has a proven track record. He has successfully closed over $500 million in high-value transactions, seamlessly bridging technology, healthcare, and infrastructure with innovative financial solutions. His experience is a testament to his ability to drive success. Case Capital Markets offers businesses direct access to over 32,000 venture capital firms, private equity funds, family offices, and institutional investors. This network empowers mid-market companies with under $100 million in revenue to scale beyond their limits, unlocking unprecedented growth potential. Debt, equity, growth capital, public offerings. These are the building blocks of the future of capital access. Whether you're scaling a business, seeking investment, or exploring market expansion, Grant McGaw is your trusted partner. Together, you can unlock capital and create long-term financial success. The future belongs to those who take action. Are you ready to elevate your business?
Follow the Brand TV broadcast host, Grant McGaw, as he visits with top executives and entrepreneurs to find out their secrets of success with their personal brand. Follow the Brand TV broadcast host as he focuses on brand development to build better relationships, bring value to your business, relationships, and career. You will enjoy listening to each episode that is tailored to speak to you directly. If you're looking for this type of clarity in terms of building your brand, you have tuned into the right station. Each episode will help you to shape a conversation in the 5-star BDM network of 20,000 professionals and become a springboard for your corporate engagement and business opportunities. Each guest will frame their story in the areas of personal branding, business development, career development, financial empowerment, and technology innovation. Grant McGaw explains why he is the CEO and owner of his own professional career. Grant is an accomplished business leader and entrepreneur who wants to give back to individuals to grow their personal brand strategy. Tune in as he weaves his story about new possibilities, while to you exceed expectations. If you love storytelling, this show will make for fun.
We're talking big picture here with Chris Principe, Grant McGaw. We're getting into our second section. We're talking about the unbanked in the world of banking. traditional banking as opposed to what's happening now. Chris, help us understand, because this might be an Uber moment for the banking world.
Grant, that's a great way to put it, because I agree with you. I'd like to just step back for a little bit, because there's one or two things that we had in that first session that just for me was priceless. And the biggest thing is this lack of financial education throughout our school system, right? So we talked a little bit about car loans and how that is, credit cards is another one. This speaks to our unbanked issue, and I'll pull it together for you. So on the credit card side, it's so saturated that Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express, all the big ones, they need kids to turn 18 to bring in new customers, right? So they bombard these kids with these offers, and if you look at the offer, they'll say, "Oh, you're pre-qualified for $500," and you send it right in, and yeah, you get a credit card right away. But they never flip over the back. On the back, it tells you right away what the interest rate is. And, I'm seeing interest rates, Grant, believe it or not, legitimate credit cards with interest rates of like 34.9%.
Crazy.
It's incredible. And one way to stop that is for people just to say no to those cards, because that interest rate, I don't know. There's loan sharking in the criminal world.
I was going to say, that sounds like legal loan sharking.
So how does an interest rate at 35% roughly become legal to do? The other thing that you need to look at on the back there is, what are the fees? And the fees can be quite daunting if you look at them, and can cost you quite a bit. And then the other trick that I really like that they do is, okay, here's your credit card, $500 credit limit, but there's an annual fee of $95. So before you even have your card in your hand, you only have $405 worth of credit.
Yeah.
So when you start looking at these things, what's the risk to these establishments that are doing it? There really isn't. And there's an interesting one right now, Grant. I'm sure you've probably seen it, but I'm really interested in looking at what's going to go on with Capital One buying Discover. Okay, so it's been interesting. When we started with credit cards and all, many of the banks were actually the credit card, and then they spun them off and they became separate companies, right?
Right.
Here, we have the reverse happening. Discover is already an existing and successful credit card for many years, and we have a bank, Capital One, buying that. Now, Capital One as a bank in the industry is known as a credit card bank. They've made their money on that. They've made their reputation on that, and they do it very well. And they've really done very well in figure out one of the toughest issues in the credit card business for banks, which is minimizing the risk. Right? So how does this tie back to the unbanked? Well, here's how it ties back. And I'll just go to something. I spoke at an event that was in Kampala. It was in Uganda, and it was an event of for banking and for credit cards. And the theme of this event was the unbanked. I was on a panel with MasterCard, who is the guy who's head of Africa from MasterCard, right? As well as somebody from Lloyd's Bank, who is in charge of Africa. It was a 3-person panel, right? And, it was just interesting. I listened to them, and they talked about all the benefits it will be for all the people in the continent who are not in the banking system to be in the banking system. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself that something is really wrong here. And here's what I see is wrong, right? You generally have people who don't have great incomes, right? So those are the people they're targeting. This is the unbanked. The unbanked is not people that have $1 million incomes. Okay,
right?
They're banked already. These are people. So let me understand how, if I'm making $100 a week and I open up a bank account and you're going to charge me every month a fee for having that bank account. You're going to make it difficult for me to take my money. Okay, the ATM only allows me to take so much when doesn't matter how much I have in there. On top of that, you're going to look to sell me other products like insurance, like car loans, like annuities, all these things, which I can't afford to buy anyway. And if I do, what is my financial position going to be? And you're telling these people that this is a good thing. And so I ended up having, quite an interesting and at a point heated conversation with the MasterCard guy, because credit cards are even worse. These people don't need credit cards. The last thing they need when you make $100 a week is to get a credit card so that you have an additional bill, because you're just barely paying your bills to begin with. Not only just paying your bills, but a credit card that's charging you interest and yearly fees on top of it.
Yeah.
How does these people, MasterCard, for instance, how do they make the argument that this is a benefit for those people? I don't see it. Grant, what do you think?
You're better off. Now we're talking to my unbanked audience right here, especially these kids, even before they turn 18, they probably realize you're better off having your own money, right? And then utilizing that money as your piggy bank. That's your bank. You're the bank. Be your own bank, right? And as long as you have that bank, and you can have it as you were saying, you can now park that same amount of money in a PayPal, in a Venmo, and it's these other things. They're not charging these fees, to utilize the service, and you can instantaneously, utilize the funds instantaneously. And there's so many different ways you can use that nowadays that you couldn't before. But when it comes to credit and how they've got it now, like, if you want to buy a car, you got to have verifiable income. If you want to buy any kind of substantial investment of some type, they kind of got you. So you've got to be careful about that, because if you're not visible in these certain markets, that shows that you are a good candidate, that you'll pay back the loan if that's what you're going after. And I to your point, you shouldn't call it a credit card. It's a debt card. No, it's a debt card. You should say, hey, how much debt would you like? I'd like $500 worth of debt. Okay. We'll take $100 off the table and give you $400 worth of debt, because that's basically what you've gotten at that point. But when you realize how to, if you're educated, to our earlier point, if you're educated and you have financial knowledge and you understand how these things work, and I've seen more and more kids are getting into cryptocurrency. They're starting to understand Bitcoin. It's like, you know what? I can do, the exchange of goods and services in a digital world. Actually, it's better for me, because I'm not getting those ugly fees and those ugly interest rates and the predatory lending that happens on college campuses. They should be, in my opinion, ashamed of themselves. Like, wow, you're going to go out and get these kids who don't even have a job and throw them into even more debt after they've gotten on campus and probably have a student loan. And you're going to make sure when they leave that campus, guess what? You're $100,000 in debt. Have fun. Bye. So you got to be very careful about these things.
Yeah, I mean, Grant, those are excellent points, and they feed right into this whole conversation. And I got to go back again to say that the education has to be there, because at least you can make a better, more educated decision on things. Okay, having that education might not prevent you from going into debt, because that seems to be the way everybody works these days. And then the other thing that you brought up, and I'll give you a story from when I was growing up. I had a good friend of mine when I was growing up who was a hustler. He was a hard worker, right? This kid saved up everything. When he bought his bicycle, he saved up all the money, went and bought his bicycle. His first car, he saved up, he bought a brand new car, put cash down on it, right? Fast forward a few more years, he's 27, he's married, been married for 2 years, they're in an apartment, they've saved up, they want to buy a house, they've got a good down payment, no one would give him a mortgage.
Right.
And to me, this is the person you would want to lend to. This is a person who doesn't sleep at night if he knows he owes money, right? Because, and he's willing to sacrifice and wait and save up for it. And
we gotta
we
go to
need
break,
some of
bro.
that.
We gotta go to break right quick. But what you
Okay,
said,
great.
when we come back, we got to really unpack that even more, because you understand the game. We are on a board game of Monopoly. There's a bank there. Everybody's doled out money. We have to understand the system in which you operate it, because what you brought up is so important. Here you got all this cash, yet you can't get credit. Wow. So we'll unpack that when we come back.
In today's world, where every voice competes for attention, true influence stands out. One visionary has redefined the landscape of brand building. His name is Grant McGaw, and his innovative approach is setting new standards in the industry. Recognized among the top 30 global gurus in branding for 2025, Grant McGaw is a name synonymous with transformative brand leadership. His work is not just about creating brands, it's about crafting legacies. Through his visionary strategies, he is helping leaders across the globe redefine their impact and influence. At the heart of Grant's success is the revolutionary BRAVE framework. BRAVE stands for branding, resilience, authenticity, vision, and excellence. Each element is meticulously crafted to guide leaders in building brands that are not only successful, but also meaningful. Branding sets the foundation, resilience ensures longevity, authenticity builds trust, vision drives innovation, and excellence guarantees quality. This framework is where data meets storytelling and strategy meets authenticity. From healthcare to technology, Grant's methodology is reshaping how industries approach branding. His strategies are not confined to a single sector. They are universal, adaptable, and effective. By integrating the BRAVE framework, organizations are experiencing a transformation in how they connect with their audiences, ensuring their message resonates and endures. Grant McGaw's influence extends beyond frameworks. Through his best-selling books and the acclaimed Follow the Brand podcast, he shares insights and strategies that empower leaders to elevate their brand presence. These resources are a testament to his commitment to shaping the future of branding. Grant McGaw is not just influencing the present, he is shaping the future of brand influence. His work is a beacon for those seeking to lead with purpose and impact. By embracing his methodologies, leaders are equipped to navigate the complexities of modern branding with confidence and clarity. Discover the BRAVE approach to brand leadership and unlock the potential of your brand. At 5-Star BDM, where vision meets results, Grant McGaw invites you to embark on a journey of transformation. Experience the power of strategic branding and redefine your impact in the world.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stock futures were moving lower this morning. President Donald Trump's latest round of tariffs is now in place. Trump's latest tariffs pushed those imposed on China this year to as high as 104%. And now China has raised tariffs on U.S. goods to 84%. Oil today sank to a fresh 4-year low on demand concerns. It was well below $60 a barrel this morning. Another major loss for Wall Street yesterday that started with promise. Stocks jumped higher at the opening bell, but after another volatile session, punctuated by tariff remarks from the White House, the Dow finished down 320 points, the S&P 500 fell 79, the Nasdaq slid 335 points. Former Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers warned that the U.S. is now likely headed toward a recession, with potentially 2 million Americans put out of work thanks to tariff increases. Summers spoke with Wall Street Week, predicting losses in household income of $5,000 per family or more. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, we are back. We are back. And Chris, I know we got people leaning in right now. They're leaning in because what you said, you got this guy who is a traditional saver. He saved his money. He bought his first bicycle. He knows how to make money. He's very, very prudent with what he does. And then he's got his piggy bank. You know, your traditional. I got my money under my bed, right, or something to that effect. And then he's like, you know, he's got all this money, and then he's like, you know what, I want to go buy a house, and he doesn't have house money. You know, now you need $500,000 now to buy a house. He doesn't have that much. Let's say you got $100,000, so he needs a loan for the $400,000. He's like, hey, here's my $100,000 down. Pump your brakes. You don't have really much of a credit history here. We can't give you a loan. Talk to us about that.
Well, and you know, it's really interesting that, you know, things are predicated on that, but this is the system. And in fact, you know, they prefer to have somebody that doesn't really have good credit over somebody that hasn't borrowed and doesn't have any credit, right? So, you know, try to figure that one out, right? But, you know, again, and the other part of that is that there's also not a lot of people out there who have that approach anymore of saying, okay, if I want something, let me save up and my money and get it. You know, our society today has just, you know, kind of dramatically over the last few decades has become more of, I want it now, and I don't really care what the general ramifications are. And the financial system says, hey, yeah, you can have it now. It is really easy. Don't worry about anything. Just make your monthly payment.
Yeah. You know what? That is, it's predatory lending. But if you have to do, and shame on us, before, you know, we teach our kids, we should be teaching our kids, you know, about predators. Everybody knows about, you know, you go outside, hey, don't take candy from a stranger. This, you need to understand the financial landscape in which you're operating in. And as a parent, I had to teach my kids these things. Like, yeah, it's good to get a credit card. I'm not telling you don't get a credit card, but it's a responsible instrument. You got to be responsible for it. It's almost like when you were in school and you just got into ninth grade. Well, guess what? If you get a C or a D now, it's going to hurt you when you're a senior. You try to get into a great college, and you're only 14, 15 years old. You're not thinking about, well, this is going to affect me when I get, 18 or 19. It's the same type of thing. So having responsible credit is such a responsibility. And then understanding that, okay, if you do go get that high interest card because you don't have any credit history when you first start out, maybe you start out, but start out low, but be able to make enough money. Remember, you got to pass go, collect your $200, right? And then understand, like, all right, and this is another weird thing. Oh, I have enough money, I can just pay off the credit card debt. No, you want to keep a little bit of balance there to demonstrate that you can pay on time. It's not about paying it off. It's about paying on time. So this is just how the system works. Now we're talking about banked and unbanked, or your traditional worlds, as opposed to these new financial systems that are coming online every day. People are talking about meme coins. They're talking about all these different things as financial instruments that are outside of this world of credit. We're talking about this world of banking, this traditional world of selling you all these financial services in a different way. Help us understand that more.
Well, Grant, I want to go back again to education because it is so critical and it's so unavailable. And I think the problem for a lot of parents today is they also don't know. And to make it worse, things are changing quickly, So here, and your advice, I think, is sound, right? You reach age, you should get a credit card. You don't need a high capacity card, $500, $1,000, no more than that. And what the banking community wants to see, what the credit card providers want to see, what the people that rate your credit want to see, is that, yes, you carry a balance. And the ideal percentage is 30%. If you carry a balance of 30%, you make your payments on time, it does a couple of things. One, it shows that you can make money for the credit card company or the bank. Okay? They don't want to invest in people that don't make them any money. So if you have $100 on your credit card, you pay it off every month, they don't get a chance to make any money. It doesn't help your credit. It sounds strange. It is, okay? But, these credit card companies and these banks that are behind it and everything are, they have to make a profit. So the ideal client for them is somebody that keeps about a 30% balance. So on $1,000 card, about $300. You make your monthly payments. Actually, you make a little bit more. If your monthly payment's $50, pay $75. And then they get to see that. Now, the problem with a lot of people is they get their credit card, $1,000 limit, and in a week, it's up to $900. Okay? So here, your credit utilization is also an important component in your credit score. So if all your credit cards are at 80 or 90% full, well, you look like a bad risk because you're not managing
the score goes all the way down. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing people don't understand too. Let's say I have 4 credit cards, and that's a lot. You shouldn't really have a need for 4 credit cards. Okay. If you have a need for 4 credit cards, it's because you're buying stuff you can't afford. It's the only reason, right?
Yeah.
But let's say you have 4 credit cards, and let's say you're good. You don't have a balance on any of them, right? When you go to apply for a loan and everything, and they look at your credit score and everything, one of the things they take into consideration is that, okay, you have 4 credit cards, $1,000 credit line in each, 0 balance. But tomorrow, you could have a $4,000 balance. So
Exactly.
if you have 4 credit cards, they count it as if they're fully utilized when they work on your score. So that's why most people, I think, if you have 2 credit cards, that's where you should be at. These days, you want to look for a credit card that provides you some other benefits, whether it's cash rebate or points or, whatever the things are. It's free money in some ways. Unfortunately, what people don't realize is those mechanisms, which are now very popular in stores, for instance, are all doing it. They all contribute to the price you pay. So I might get that 1% cash rebate and be benefiting, but there's probably 10 other people that haven't done that or not doing that, but they're paying more for their product because the company or the store or the bank has to consider the 1% rebate they're paying me.
Yeah.
Right? So there's no free rides. This is what it is.
It's a for-profit business. Capitalism is for-profit. And what you said, man, I want our audience to really lean in what you said. If you're paying off your credit card all the time, you have a 0 balance. Like in the banking center, like I didn't make any money. I gave you $500, then you gave me back $500. I didn't make anything. This is not good for me. So, we need to all understand these things. Now, let's switch to gears. I want you to really understand, because of what's happening in we say, untraditional banking system, that we've got these other ways of buying and transacting monies outside of this banking credit card world. How's that affecting everything?
Well, Grant, let's go back to the unbanked, okay? What do these people need for their daily life? Again, they need a way to pay and get paid. That's very simple, okay? And the mobile phone is an ideal instrument for this, and it's being used extensively for that now, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's one part of it, right? Is that the other part of it, what a lot of people don't realize, is that for these fintech companies, for even the PayPals, even the Venmos, the Cash Apps that you mentioned, they basically have to be a pass through for your money, right? The only people that can actually hold your money are banks. That's what a bank license is for. And only because they have the bank license are they legally allowed to actually hold your money. And this is what keeps banks in business, basically. Because if it wasn't for this process, fintech companies, even some of these nuevo banks would all be able to do things like a bank, and you wouldn't need a bank. Because, and let's face it right now today, if you keep your money in the bank, they're not paying you any interest. And in fact, there are some places where there's negative interest rates, okay? Which means that, yeah, you keep your money in my bank, but I'm going to charge you 1%, not pay you 1%. Right? So these are some of the things, but the banks themselves have that license, and right now it gives them the advantage over any of the other systems that we're using. I mean, even Cash App, for instance, or Venmo, they're actually, you see it, you see the money's on your account, but it's parked in a bank. Okay? They have to be a pass-through. They have to, you pay somebody and the money goes from you to Cash App to them.
Right.
Or vice versa, right? So right now, I think that holds back some needed changes in the banking industry. It holds back some innovation from the fintech industry, and it keeps banks from keeping the status quo, because as long as we have that license, we really don't have to invest in a lot of these new things, because we have the license. You have no choice.
All of this is like new news. It's almost like, we all need to go back to school to a certain degree and get educated financially, because there's just so much going on. Because I always wondered that, like, wow, how can you just send money like that and there's no charge or anything like that? It's just a dollar. I have a dollar. I send Chris a dollar. He has a dollar. Like, no one makes any money. Now, some of them do. Like, there's a charge. I think that you don't get the full dollar. So there's a small little percentage that's shaved off. What I also noticed is that I can do business in other parts of the world. They have other bank, or I would call them banking system, currency transference, like Payoneer, Wise. There's so I can do banking all across the globe that I never really could, before. There's exchange rates, there's all these different items that you can utilize now for your banking that you never could for options before. And now you start seeing it's a bigger game than just your local, community monopoly board. You're now playing on a global plane. It's very global. But if the banking system, and I'm gonna ask this question, and we only got like a minute or two, and then we're gonna come back and I want you to answer it. Because the traditional banks, and that's what I call the Uber moment in banking. There's a way that banks make their money. They make money really on holding your money, and then the interest rates that are charged, and then they have all these different vehicles even in the back end. And people don't realize, even though you park your money at a bank, it's just not sitting in a vault somewhere. They're utilizing it. It's going, it's working. You want your money is working, whether it's in the capital markets and the stock exchanges and the bond markets and all these different things that are taking place. So then and there's guarantees there, so that when you go to your ATM or whenever, the money that they say you have, right? Instead of, in the old day, well, we got robbed today, so we don't have your money. So it's a different world. So think about this, Chris, when we come back from break, about how this whole thing is changing the banking industry itself, and who's left out at the end of the day, when we start counting our chips. Let's think about that.
5-Star BDM, Brand Development Masters, is a professional consulting and advisory group keenly focused on business development services for the small to mid-sized business and entrepreneurs. Although every business is unique, they often share business development challenges that can be addressed through smart branding. Services include process improvement and operations, digital strategy and transformation, business intelligence, digital marketing, and personal branding. Our business and personal branding company has helped a number of professionals and organizations to optimize and grow. This results in more business, more opportunities, better reach, positive outcomes. Visit www.5starbdm.com today to learn more.
Your story is powerful. Your brand is valuable. Your business deserves to be seen, heard, and followed. The Black Business Olympics has given you the stage, showcasing Black entrepreneurs speaking on stage, networking, and leading their businesses. Now, let's take your business even further. With the Black Business Olympics logo and clips of past events and inspiring speakers, we celebrate the power of visibility and the impact of your unique story. Introducing 5-Star BDM's exclusive video creation services designed to transform your Black Business Olympics appearance into a powerful marketing tool. Our dynamic approach includes behind-the-scenes shots of video editing, branding consultations, and social media marketing. We take your business story and turn it into a high-impact video that attracts clients, builds trust, and opens doors to new business opportunities. With polished content, testimonials, and high-energy graphics, your brand will shine brighter than ever. Our process is simple and effective. Step 1. We extract the best moments from your Black Business Olympics speech. Step 2. We craft a compelling branded video with your business details, call to action, and testimonials. Step 3. You receive ready-to-share professional content for social media, websites, and email marketing. With our AI-enhanced video marketing strategies, your message reaches the right audience at the right time, so your business grows while you lead. Hear from successful entrepreneurs who have worked with 5-Star BDM. After working with 5-Star BDM, my brand awareness skyrocketed. My Black Business Olympics talk became my #1 lead generator. The video they created gave me the confidence to pitch my business to major investors. Game-changing service. These testimonials showcase the transformative power of our services and the success that follows. Your business is your legacy. Your story matters. Let's make it unforgettable. Use your videos to land deals, grow your online presence, and dominate your industry. The message is clear. Get your custom video today. Visit 5starbdm.com. 5-Star BDM. We build 5-star brands that people will follow. Are you ready to be next? Email Black Business Network for your special pricing.
All right. Now we come to the question of the day, unbanking the banked. Who loses, Chris? Who loses in a crypto-dominated world?
Well, Grant, first, and it's kind of a joke with my banker friends that, unbanking the bank. In other words, people that already are using banks, get them to stop using banks, right? And by the way, I think there's a good percentage of people that actually would like that scenario, because we're not treated very well by the banks in respect to what we provide for them.
Mm.
So this goes back to what you were just talking about before the last break, which is really how do banks make their money, right? So traditionally, there's two prime ways they do it. One is by lending. So they need deposits to come in. They pay them a certain amount of interest to attract people in, say 2%, which actually in today's market's kind of high. And then they go ahead and lend it out at 6%, 8%, 14%. So the amount of money they make there, that spread is very, very attractive, right? And then there's fees. And on a lot of banks, there's a fee that's they'll look for anywhere to generate fees. Now, over the years, a lot of fees have been eliminated, so they by regulation, really. So they can't really be able to charge these kind of things. So those are the two. The other way that's is in the FX market, so your foreign exchange market. So when somebody says a payment from this country to this country, or somebody uses their credit cards in Europe and their cards in the United States, this is another area that's still very profitable for the banks because they charge fees on both sides, the selling and of the US dollar and say the purchasing of euros. And then there's the spread in between. And the spread is if the dollar to euro is $1.10 to buy €1, well, the banks might charge $1.11, and then when they buy back, they might be at $1.09. So that spread in between is the unseen money that you pay when it comes to these things. So those are the main things that how the banks will look to charge money. So when we're looking at what do we need to do, you can easily look and say, that there are things that we don't really need the banks to be doing for us. And what are the alternatives? Well, cryptocurrency is right now is a good alternative. And it's a good alternative because one, there's the volatility, which of course can mean that it goes up, which is good. As we've seen this week, Bitcoin, for example, is the leader, has had an increase of over 15%, right? Or we could see it slide down again. So that is one of the things that you get that you don't get on the banking side. But in crypto, the other issue that we have is how to spend that money, right? So I have Bitcoin today. If I just send Bitcoin to you, Grant, there's no charge. And it happens like almost instantly, right? It's very quick. Okay. But if I want to buy something and they don't accept crypto, now I've got to change and convert that crypto into a currency, a fiat currency of choice, say US dollar, and then I can use that US dollar to now spend. But the way that these exchanges work is they charge you when you sell your Bitcoin, and then they charge you again when you withdraw your Bitcoin to your bank account, right? And those charges are actually, they're more expensive than the banks. So, and that's why you see these big exchanges being so ridiculously profitable, because they have us again. It's almost like we're stuck in the banks again in some ways. Now,
yeah,
we have
here's I want to speak to the elephant in the room on that, because you bring up something, because I live in Miami and you live, not far from the area, and we all know, the Miami Heat Arena, but for a long time it was called FX, and everybody saw Bankman, but I don't think people realize why he went to jail. What did he do that was illegal? Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of questions surrounding that, because of course you have, like anything, two sides of the story, and if you listen to his side, he didn't do anything illegal. And if you listen to the government's position, who prosecuted him, he manipulated funds. He took funds without being authorized to, these kind of things. And the government actually painted it as a Ponzi, as a scheme. And, I think that they were able to prove that, which is why he went to jail. So, these are things that happen in the industry that shouldn't, but people forget these have always happened. I mean, just the word, we call it the Ponzi scheme, because back in the 20s, a guy whose last name was Ponzi, started one of these schemes where, people were giving him money and he was paying them, more than their money back to get more people to get. But, there was no business that secured anything. Let's say there was no income producer that made up for that. So today, you see a lot of things like, people advertise, oh, we can pay you 1% a day. Well, I look at that and I say, hold on, 365% a year.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds great if I'm an investor, and to a lot of people they do, but sensibility tells you that how can they make money to provide 365% to you which means that they've got to make, I don't know, 400%. So they make some profit, right? So what investment in the world turns out 400% profit? There isn't any. So, people sometimes need to be sensible when they look at these things and think about it and say, hey, and by the way, probably the one investment that meets that requirement is the making of the U.S. $100 bill, right?
Wow.
The U.S. government, it costs them 57 cents to make a U.S. $100 bill, and its value is $100. So yeah, the U.S. government's got that profit margin, but nowhere else.
See, we go back to the very beginning of our conversation as we start to wind up here, is that we got to be financially educated. Otherwise, you're going to be taken advantage of in many different ways. What I heard today was that even though we have other alternatives outside the banking system, there's still the realities of how exchanges make money is the same. There's some kind of leverage. If I give you $1, I get I pay out 95 cents, $1.05, whatever it is, a percentage of that money comes back to moi. Either way. So if you've got, I don't know, let's say you got $100 of crypto, that's great. But like you said, if you go to spend it and that you can't get, the same level of exchange rate, and you've got to now turn it into euro, you got to turn it into dollars, that's where they get you. Like, oh, you want to utilize it, right? And as far as I know, like, can you, correct me if I'm wrong, can you go to a car dealership like, hey, I've got so much Bitcoin, I'll just transfer it to you and I'll drive off today. Is that possible? Or is that not possible?
Well, there's actually a real estate agency out there that advertises that you can pay crypto for your house. It's kind of interesting. But I want to come back to another question that you brought up that we didn't address, which is when we talk about Venmo and Cash App and PayPal, how do they make their money, right?
Yeah.
Because so there's a couple of ways. I mean, number one is advertising, right? They make some income from promoting other products, from giving you rebates on products where the manufacturers are actually paying them for the traffic, right? So that's one thing. That's one way that happens. The other, of course, is the ones that charge fees, and most of them don't charge fees for personal, but if it's a business, then they will charge a fee, right? But here's the other interesting thing, which you don't see, and of course, no one wants to talk about, is, okay, I'm Cash App. Again, I don't have a banking license. I can't hold your money, but you give me money and you see a balance. So I'm parking that money with a bank, right? So that's like, for the bank, that's like a deposit.
Yeah.
And that deposit now the bank can use to lend against, to make other fee generation business, whatever. So they pay to Cash App 1 or 2% because Cash App is parking that money for them.
There's the rabbits. You gotta be a magician these
Yep.
days. So the banks aren't really, they seem like they're out of the loop, but they're really not. And they're benefiting from that, right? It's like, oh, okay, we'll pay them 2%, but we're gonna make whatever percentage higher doing other things, right?
Right. And again, for an app, for one of these payment apps, the volume of money that they're running through, if they can pick off 1% or 2%, it's pretty profitable.
Hey, I tell you, we're coming up to our last minute, and this has been an interesting conversation. We want to keep inviting our audience to come back, because I think it's a responsibility now for us, Chris and I, to start educating people on financial responsibility. Just understanding, because and to your point, I don't think our school, they just didn't do a great job of being intentional about it. I remember having to be a couple of classes every now and then, but really you need to understand these things, because this is how we survive in this world. So come back next week. Me and Chris will be here. We're going to have more conversations around financial and financial IT, which is a big thing, and from the Caribbean lens out there in St. Croix. So I love having you with us today, and I want to thank you again for being on the show.
Grant, have a good week. We'll see you next week.
You got it. Take care.